to the Jolera interview series. I'm your host, Paolo, Nibletto, the Chief Channel Business for Jolera. This series features prominent executives from the IT industry talking about technology, innovation, leadership, and the marketplace. But today we're switching it up just a tad with Jay McBain, the Principal Analyst, Channels Partnership Alliances at Forrester Research. You know, I still look at Jay as an executive. He was the channel chief for Lenovo and Autotask, and he started his career at IBM Canada. But more importantly than his resume, McBain has successfully transformed himself from a high-tech executive to not just an analyst, but also a very key influencer in this industry. He was also named the top 40 under 40 club by Business Review. And I gotta say, Jay, if anything's on your resume stands out that I'm envious about, it's that one right there. So congrats on that. He's also the founder of Channelize, a global software company that reinvented the way vendors look at driving channel sales and loyalty. But it's in his current role where McBain is making an impact by working to drive new channels and transaction models ahead. Jay is here today to talk about this along with his own transition and the transition channel partners need to take to maintain relevance in this industry. Please welcome Jay McBain.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
So Jay, one of the things that we have in common during our careers, we've talked to a lot of companies about channel programs and channel strategies, and I've certainly lost count, but you haven't. Last year, I believe you roughly interviewed 500 companies about their channel programs and strategy, which is an incredible number. But I'd like to start there. Was there any overwhelming themes that came out of all those conversations?
Yeah, there's a number of things, and those are 500 companies that I spent at least 30 minutes with. And if I look kind of overall in terms of touch, we recognize almost 10,000 companies today that run channel programs of some type. And the growth is also phenomenal. When we look at 175,000 software companies, almost 30% of them today are thinking about channels and 10% of them are executing. There's another 17,000 coming from there. In emerging tech like IoT and AI and automation and blockchain and all the other emerging tech, we're watching 800,000 companies right now, and about 10% of them at the board level are starting to talk about channels. So we're going to see an explosion in terms of channels and partnerships and what we're really calling ecosystems. To answer your question, the things that are coming up the most is really the transformation that a lot of vendors are going through right now. There's been more change in most of the people we talked to in the last 18 months than they've seen in the last 39 years in terms of how they go to market, how their customers, behave, the journey, the psychology, this growth of marketplaces, this fact that ecosystems are, becoming much more important than ever before, and the way they look at partnerships are changing. So a lot of really interesting things to talk about.
Where's the as-a-service market in all of this? Where do you think it's headed?
A couple of weeks ago, Accenture just did a survey around the world asking every CEO in every industry, what their thoughts are of the future, not only where we are today with COVID and things like that, but where things are going. 76% of CEOs today across the world, across every industry, think that their current business model will be unrecognizable in 5 years. Ecosystems are the number one reason why, is another way of saying that 76% of companies are actively transferring into a subscription, consumption, recurring revenue type of model. We see this as consumers. People are looking at this Netflix model and they look at all these consumer-based models, but everything is becoming as a service. Everything is becoming consumption-based. And whether it's, driving your car, renting a forklift, buying paper clips, everything in your personal and professional life is rethinking their business model into this as a service model. And it's just fascinating to watch the 27 industries and all these different companies as they try to wrestle with their past and figure out how to become customer obsessed in that new world.
Yeah, I've always said it's a Netflix world these days. But this leads me into one of your big trends, which is the evolution of the super marketplace. And you believe that there's 20 to focus on. So tell me what a super marketplace is and how it impacts the channel.
Yeah, so marketplaces as a thing is something we've been watching for a decade. And we've seen the growth obviously in our personal lives of companies like Amazon and Alibaba. I don't know if you're like me, but you probably have 6 Amazon boxes at your front door right now as we speak. But the pandemic has escalated this. So McKinsey did a piece of work a couple of weeks ago using Forrester data, and they basically stated that there's been more marketplace growth in the last 3 months than there was in the last 10 years combined. If you look at the US as a market, almost 1/3 of all dollars now in the entire economy flow through marketplaces. So that's the B2C, business to consumer, that's the business to business, that's the overall macro view of marketplaces. We had originally predicted that 17% of our technology industry, which is $3.6 trillion, would start flowing through marketplaces by 2023. And what COVID has done, and from pandemics to pandemonium, what it's done is really driven that prediction back to next year. So it's accelerated by a couple of years. So every single vendor, every single partner of all types, every single distributor, everyone in this ecosystem, when you're starting to talk about 17% of their top line revenue moving through marketplaces, we're starting to uncover now where that's going to go. We already know the winners. It's already been decided, even though we're in the first or second inning of this long baseball game. We know today that, for example, in the cloud space, AWS, Azure, and Google are going to be winners. In the SaaS space, we already see Salesforce as a winner. ServiceNow, Workday, Marketo, NetSuite, you'll recognize the rest. We know in the legacy world that IBM and SAP and Oracle, but you count up all of these winners, and there's about 20 that'll probably capture almost 80% of the dollars, of those 17% of dollars. And we're talking 17% of $3 trillion. I mean, this is significant dollars that will move from resellers, move from agents, move from MSPs into marketplaces. And what does that mean?
Well, is it just the onset of digital? Because you coined one of the more interesting terms from a channel perspective, which is trifurcated channel. Did I say that correctly?
You did, and it's a complicated way to say that. The average channel professional today is looking at their channel, their ecosystem of partners in a new way. We talked about the new buyer, the psychology, the behavior. As millennials become the majority of buyers in a few years, a lot is changing with every company's buyer. And when you look at their journey, a few things stick out. I mentioned, 65% of cloud decisions happen outside of IT. When you study these buyers, we study 690,000 of these buyers. And, they come back and say that they look more like consumers. This digital journey that they're on early on, in a majority of cases now, turns into vendor selection before they ever talk to a salesperson, before they ever get into your marketing cycle by filling out a form on a website. They are doing their own work, and buying software, buying hardware, and buying services today looks a lot like buying a car in terms of the journey that people are on digitally. And what vendors are figuring out quickly is that this whole influence has a different set of channels. And the people that are writing the ebooks and recording the podcasts and doing the association work and the events and all the things in terms of what a customer reads, where they go, and who they follow, happens earlier and earlier on the journey. So when you do a Google search about one of your buyers and early in their journey, the first 2 or 3 pages of Google results ought to be your partners, because they're the ones most influential to your partner or to your customer early on. So that influence channel is blowing up. This is alliances, it's affinity partners, it's affiliates and ambassadors, advocates. There's all kinds of influence that happens with non-transacting partners. And then the second part is the transactional, which we've known and loved for 39 years. But with every company, at least 76% of them becoming subscription as a service businesses, the transaction is really only the first 30 days with a customer. At the 30-day mark, now you got to work on retention and renewals. So it doesn't matter the industry you're in. Your product needs to be adopted. If your product isn't adopted, you're not going to get the renewal. People need to use it and love it. Second, it needs to be integrated. This isn't just technology, it's everything now. it needs to be sticky inside of what the customer does, so it can't be unplugged easily. So there's people working on integrations that drive retention and renewals for you. And what's most important is every 30 days forever, you need to earn the customer's trust, because the customer journey now never ends. So who's out there every 30 days driving upsell and cross-sell for you across your broader portfolio, enriching these contracts? So with the focus going now post-transaction, what retention channel have you built? And these are different kinds of players, and there's a big percentage chance that these are not transactional partners. So that's the trifurcation. You have an influence channel, you have a transactional channel, and you have a retention channel, which cover the entire customer journey that goes on forever.
And I guess that's really what we're talking about, is the overall customer experience, right? You got to factor all these in, and you got to have a great experience, or else, they may look elsewhere.
Yeah, and so something interesting is happening in the market is that when you study customer experience, what you end up doing is something called journey mapping. You map out every moment a customer has from that very first time they thought they had a problem or think they needed something. And every moment in time, who touches them, how are they touched, how are they influenced, and how do they get to their decision? What companies are learning by doing this work now is that in over half the cases, it's not them in that moment. It's one of their partners, or even worse, it's not one of their partners in those early moments. And guess what? In 75% of the world GDP that goes indirect, it's more likely that one of your partners are going to be visible in those early moments than you are. So it's not about direct selling and direct marketing anymore. It's about partner experience that gets overlaid on the customer experience. It's about the partner journey that gets overlaid on the customer journey. And if you can make those things tie up, and you can do this trifurcated model and make sure that you have channels built at every moment in that customer's time, and that everyone that surrounds them is saying nice things about you and making sure to inject your solution at the right time in the conversation, this is the battle for the future. This is the battle for the next decade.
Wow, that's fascinating. Okay, so Jay, I got a two-part question for you. Number one, you've also said that the current business model will be unrecognizable in the next 5 years. Now, does that include the as-a-service model, and what will be the first model to go by the wayside?
I think as-a-service model is the endpoint after all these companies. So every company in every industry, the car you drive, the fridge you put your beer into, every part of your life, the insurance that you buy, the bank that you go to, everything in your life is going to convert into this monthly as-a-service model. And so, this isn't hard for agents, for example, who grew up in the telco world where everything has been monthly recurring. This isn't hard for managed service providers. For 20 years now, they've built out this recurring model, and they understand how to build a model. And for a lot of VARs, it was very difficult making that jump, because it is significant in terms of skills and financials and operations, how you sell, how you market, how you basically run every part of your business. Now, you take that up into a bank, or you take that up into a major manufacturer, you take that into an airline, you take that into every other industry, and this is an end of company conversation if they don't get it right. So this as a service model, which is the 76% of everything you do as a consumer and everything you do as a business, will be converted into this new consumption model or subscription models that, it's going to be less about the purchase. Again, the purchase is only your first 30 days. And we're going to get better at, trying things out and piloting them for 30 days. And if they don't seem to work and we don't get them adopted, we don't get them integrated into our life or our business, and, we're not there with people who can help, we're going to dump it after 30 days. So there's so much less risk now in procurement that you're going to overlook the transaction and look at those 30-day milestones. Every time you need to renew, every time it hits your credit card, you're going to ask yourself, has Netflix been worth it? Yeah, I think it has. Has Disney Plus been worth it? Yeah, I think it has. And every month when you look at these long list of things, they're only $5 each or $10 each, but you're going to start to think about it in a different way. American Airlines, is that $10 a month worth it? My bank, $10 a month, has that been worth it? My insurance, has that been worth? And now you've got the same amount of money you spend already, but split up monthly. And you just got to ask yourself each time, am I getting the value?
Yeah, and you can dump them at the end of the month if they don't service you.
Right, a day before, and there's going to be companies that help you dump them the day before the renewal, and help you surface up. Hey, I noticed that you haven't had Netflix on in 3 months. It's cost you $30 during those 3 months. Do you want it for the next month? You're right. I haven't been at home, or I've been on vacation. Let me pause that. So there's whole industries that will be created under these subscription models that help us service as consumers and as businesses, help us make sure that we're provisioning and that we're getting the most value out of these licenses that we're buying.
Fascinating. So I want to switch gears a bit. There are several new waves of innovation hitting the marketplace, such as artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, which you mentioned, 5G, a lot of hype these days around 5G. How do you see these new waves hitting the market?
Well, there's a couple things here. So I mentioned we're watching 800,000 companies right now. It's fascinating to watch how Internet of Things have transformed that forklift manufacturer into looking more like Tesla than the manufacturer they looked like 18 months ago. So we're watching all of these cross-industry plays across all of the different emerging techs. And it goes beyond the list that you just said into blockchain and quantum computing and drones and self-driving cars. You could look at 50 emerging technologies. But the main thing is this, and this is going back to my 76% of business models. Most of emerging technology, and almost all of them, are embedded. Everything you just said is not a SKU. You're not going to go on Amazon.com or go to your grocery store and buy AI. You're going to expect that AI makes things better. So it's going to be embedded in things you already have in your life. It's not going to be some box that you buy and unpackage. When you buy blockchain, you're not ever going to go to a marketplace and buy yourself a blockchain.
Yeah.
You're going to expect that the healthcare provider, has your history in a, general ledger sense that's purely protected in that kind of technology. So as you look across all of those layers in Internet of Things, you're never going to, maybe you do see the plastic device or the plastic sensor, but it's probably going to fade into the background. You're going to start, you're going to be oblivious to them. But the fact of the matter is the value they create, the data and all the compute and everything that wraps around that changes everything. So the one of the reasons in my, I spent 17 years at IBM, one of the reasons they're struggling is that they're on the forefront of almost every technology. AI, they defeated, Jeopardy. They defeated the chess grandmaster using AI. And we all kind of know the stories of Watson. They're working on blockchain with all the major banks. They're working on all these levels of automation and everything else. But the fact of the matter is the IBM sales force sells SKUs. They know how to sell boxes. And none of these are boxes. So to go full circle, the future of IBM is an ecosystem company. And they make everyone else better based on their science and their technology. And unless they figure out this ecosystem play with millions of moving parts, even though they might have the best technology, they're not going to win. So the companies that understand ecosystems, the companies that understand how to embed 7 things into a positive, consumer or business outcome are going to be the winners in this space. That's the change in business model. That's the idea where the ecosystem, the head of the strategic partnerships and alliances and channels and all this, they enter the boardroom. And they're now on par with your head of sales and your head of marketing, your head of operations, your head of finance, in terms of what makes the future value of your company.
Yeah, the integration point's a real fascinating one, because even here we've integrated Watson and AI into our offerings. But I want to ask you about the poster in the back there, because I've seen it several times, Jay, and for me it's one of the most impressive things that you've created at Forrester, which is your Channel Tech 2020 stack. And I have to say, I've never seen so many logos on one slide. And we're going to bring that graphic up here in this video. But why did you create this, and where is the MSP's role in all that stack?
It's a great question, and these stacks have actually become something. There's a guy by the name of Scott Brinker who works at HubSpot now, but he created the MarTech stack, and he did this like 7 or 8 years ago. And today the MarTech stack has 8,000 logos on one PowerPoint slide. So if you just Google MarTech stack, you can take a look at what 8,000 logos. What's interesting, when I went through those 6 parts of the market, there are tech stacks today built on a certain buyer. There are ones that are built on a certain industry, fintech stack, there's a healthcare stack, there's HR stacks. There's ones built on geography, a Canadian stack, a European GDPR stack. There's ones built on sector and segments, like an SMB stack or an enterprise stack or government or healthcare stack. There are ones that are built on certain products, a security stack, there is a compliance stack, server stack. Then the actual partners themselves, there's MSP stacks today, there are ISV stacks and system integrator, et cetera. So when you look at those 6 elements, this stack is actually built on a buyer. So if you run a channel today and you have partners and you're building out these strategic relationships and you need to manage it and incent it, you need to onboard people, you need to do all of the data and all the work around it. There's 159 companies today that do that work. It's about a $2 billion market. There's 7 layers to the solution on how to do this at scale, automated, flexible, adaptable. So if you're that particular buyer, I've built that very, narrow stack, very niche stack for you. There's 175,000 software companies today, but as a buyer, there's only 159 that are actually pretty relevant to what you're trying to do. So it's kind of this idea of narrowing the funnel, and I'm the curator or I'm the validator or the vetter for that buyer to save them a bunch of work. So that they're not out looking at 8,000 logos or 80,000 logos to try to figure out what to do. It's kind of been narrowed in terms of, here are a selection of what you should be thinking about and a selection of leaders in your industry or in your, type of company. But that's what stacks are. And it helps people in terms of figure out what they are doing right, what they could be doing better, and talking to companies that are investing in roadmaps for the next 18 months of where you need to take, your job and your department, your division, your ecosystem.
Let me ask you about COVID-19 and the lockdown. You currently live in Florida, but your roots are in Canada. What do you think will be the lasting impact of this lockdown on IT for North America?
There's a number of elements. I write a whole piece called Quantifying It. So I know what the revenue elements and the profit elements, we're looking closely at what the fallout is going to be in terms of comparing this to 2008 or 2001. There's a lot of financial aspects to this and business model aspects, but in the end, there's a new future of work. And we've gone through, in the channel, we've gone through some major topology changes. Client server really created the managed services market. When we moved into cloud, the multi-cloud, hybrid cloud, where there's mystery, there's margin, created a lot of opportunity in a second topology. Now we're into a third topology where people are at home on consumer notebooks, on a consumer network, going through a consumer router that you share with your neighbor at the front street, and getting access to enterprise class data and systems. Well, this new remote topology where we're seeing right now about 30% of people may never return to work in the way that they once were in cubicle farms. We're seeing major companies delay into next year and some getting rid of their headquarters altogether. So you can start thinking about a different future of work. Think about a remote topology. How do you integrate that? How do you secure that? How do you make it compliant? How do you do business continuity in that kind of topology? Again, mystery, there's margin. Go and talk to your clients about accelerating their cloud technologies, accelerating automation to make that work, accelerating security with new threat vectors, accelerating new ways that they can focus on customers given this new topology. So there are a lot of conversations that come out of the future of work, and that will be the lasting impact of COVID, I believe.
How do you think the vendors and the channel partners handle the pandemic and the subsequent lockdown, in your opinion?
Yeah, we're looking at it in terms of phases. In phase one, some vendors and distributors stood up and provided some capital and credit facilities, and what they learned from 2008 when 25% of partners actually went bankrupt or were forced into M&A. So we were able to avoid some of that early. Government stepped up as well. But now we're into phase two, and vendors are going from survival mode to thrive. And they're starting to recognize the opportunities. They're starting to recognize some of these ecosystem and marketplace opportunities. They're also recognizing that partners are more important than ever. Again, when you look at a trifurcated channel, when you look at your entire customer journey, most of it you don't own the moments. They're starting to warm up to the fact that the future will be ecosystems, and how they incent those three different parts of the customer journey, and how they make sure, and it's probably a 10-time multiplier from the channel they have built today, to go from a transactional to a non-transactional to this trifurcated model. You're going to have 10 times the relationships you have today to make sure you're surrounding your prospects and your clients, with the right people to drive the right outcome. So in the end, I think vendors are now moved on from survival mode to now, how do they take advantage and how do they help their partnerships and their entire ecosystem, survive and thrive, into the next stage.
So I want to ask you about you in your own career path. I feel you've made a 100-degree shift from your earlier career, and you've been, successful on both sides of it. And that's something that a lot of people have not been able to do. Some have tried and some have failed. Why did you go down this path in your own career?
It's interesting. I mean, I'm not motivated by money. So I'm motivated by, different things. I tend to be very goal-oriented, though. Early in my career in Canada, I wanted to be a channel chief. It's a role that, I looked up to and aspired and wrote about and analyzed and things like that. And I was able to get that at IBM. And then I moved over to Lenovo and was able to be a channel chief at Lenovo and Autotask. My next goal was to become a CEO by the age of 40. And so I was able to step away from big corporate, companies, Fortune 500 clients, and then move into being a CEO of a startup, raising money and getting into that world completely opposite. And it's the best part of my resume. It was like a 5-year MBA in business and entrepreneurship. And I better understand the channel because now I've grown a business and I've, gone through the pain and suffering of, crying in the fetal position in my, office the day before payroll. The fact of the matter is, after that, my default skill is kind of analytical. I count things, I look at things. I always like to, take a macro view and try to break it down into what it means for people. And that's an obvious connection to Forrester. Forrester kind of challenges thinking and is in the mode of, making bold predictions and getting on the inside of all parts. And now I get to, work in my career as kind of a curmudgeon. Somebody that takes in a lot of information every day through a fire hose every day from those 10,000 vendors, from all the distributors, from all the partners, from millions of sources every day, and try to make sense of it and try to help people in terms of where they should be thinking next in terms of their own business.
So Jay, I've asked all the questions. Do you want to add anything that you felt I didn't cover in any of my questions?
No, I appreciate you having me on, and this is probably the most exciting time in our industry, and there's all kinds of change, and if nothing else, there's more opportunity now than ever, but you got to look inside, some of these trends and start to, make it applicable in your market, in front of your prospects, in really how you're going to run your business, not only in the next 18 months, but how you look ahead 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, we said at the top, we need the channel to be more relevant these days. So thank you very much for your time, Jay, today. Really insightful. Where can people find you on social media or online?
Yeah, happy to, if you want to link in with me, I'm happy to answer questions there. Or if you want to catch me on Twitter, I'm pretty social, so you'll probably find me everywhere. My blog sits on Forrester, where I write a lot about this stuff and more depth than we talked about it today. So, always happy, no matter how you find me, to have a conversation.
Okay, well, there you have it from the Principal Analyst, Channels, Partnerships, and Alliances at Forrester Research, Jay McBain. Thank you again. I'm Paolo Nibletto saying so long for now for the Jolera interview series.